Now we have a little segment that I like to call Do Yourself a Favor. Right here is where there would be a cool graphic or animation. We do not have that yet. I only kind of came up with the name for the segment a few days ago, and my buddy has not yet made the animation that we have planned, but it will be cool and charming when it exists. Anyway, the idea of Do Yourself a Favor is, obviously this show is based mostly on, is actually completely on movies that are on Netflix Instant, but there are some movies that are out in theaters now that I would like to recommend, that you do yourself a favor and check out. As you've seen, this is sort of an Errol Morris based show today, and he has a movie out right now called TABLOID. TABLOID's only really it's in selected theaters right now, probably just like 2 in New York and 2 in LA, but if you get a chance, do yourself a favor and catch it. TABLOID tells the story of Joyce McKinney, who in 1977 became really the target of a tabloid frenzy in England. Joyce McKinney was a former Miss Wyoming, and she fell in love with a Mormon man, and all of a sudden he kind of disappeared and ended up in England, apparently to do his mission. And she was so crazy in love with him that she traveled to England, and from there it gets a little bit murky about what happened. And obviously this story had a lot of elements that the tabloid press just loved. They became known as the story of the manacled Mormon. And it had sex, it had bondage, it had kidnapping, it had guns, and at the center of it was this woman who seemingly just loved the attention and everything. And what's interesting about this movie is that Errol Morris has done mostly more serious topics, and this one is hard to say lighthearted, but obviously, there are no kind of international political implications of it. It's been getting wonderful reviews. It's at an 89% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, and Roger Ebert, who's a really big fan of Errol Morris, said, "If Tabloid is a love story, it is one only Errol Morris could film. It is a spellbinding enigma and one of the damnedest films Morris has ever made." Ebert has also said in the past that he thinks that Errol Morris is as great a filmmaker as Hitchcock or Fellini. And while I've not seen a lot of Fellini films, I'm inclined to agree. Of course, if Tabloid is not playing near you, which it probably isn't unless you live in one of those 2 cities, what you can do is put it on your Netflix queue. Another great thing that Netflix is good for is it helps you remember what movies that you wanted to see, and then when it becomes available, it will pop right up there and then you can watch it. So anyway, here's a little clip from Tabloid. As I said, do yourself a favor, check it out.
The law was required to take seriously an act involving a woman with a gun pointing it at a priest, forcing him, although this was a sort of fantasy, forcing him into a car and spread-eagling him to a bed and having sex with him. I mean, there are so many crimes, possible crimes involved in all of that. And yet everyone suspected there wasn't really a crime here at all.
Scenario number 1 is Kirk's story. Fake gun, chloroform, kidnapped, tied up, forced to have sex. The second version is Joyce's story. They were going to be married. They were going to have children. He needed to escape from the Mormon Church. She goes to rescue him. They rush away and have this magical, wonderful weekend together. And then they get him, they brainwash him, and all of a sudden he's claiming rape. The third scenario is something in between. There was a consensual aspect to his getaway with her. But then somewhere along the line, he had second thoughts, and he wanted it to stop, and it didn't.
Do you think a woman can rape a man?
No. I think that's like putting a marshmallow in a parking meter. A guy either wants to have sex or he doesn't.